All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Board of Trustees regular meeting for April 21st at 6 o'clock.
Call the roll. Mr. Genowine?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Simcoe here, and record to reflect that Mr. Crandall is out of the city.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, do we have approval of the minutes from the 24th of March?
I'll offer the minutes as presented.
Second?
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes. Any additions to deletions to the agenda?
I have none.
Hearing of the public? Anybody sign in?
Nobody signed in.
Zoning Department, Darrell.
Good evening. You have before you the monthly report for March for zoning. Permits, we had 32 permits at just over $3 million in value, and year-to-date that brings us up to 72 permits at $6.3 million in value. And if you look at last year and see the large numbers there, if you look up ahead and see that $4.5 million under new construction commercial, that is the shops at Franklin Place that were constructed last year, the Marshalls and Home Goods. And so that kind of, that's what makes last year look so good. If you take that out of the equation, then this year looks even better, but I'm just throwing that out there. Single-family dwellings, we're continuing to roll along with those. We have 22 year-to-date, just under a 16% increase, and value of $5.6 million, 27% increase over last year. Zoning complaints, it continues to look like a strong year in the complaint department. 11 for the month of March, which isn't a lot, but you look at it, it's about almost as much as the last 2 years combined, and 19 year-to-date, and again, almost the last 2 years combined. So, can't wait for that grass to get growing. The monthly meetings, zoning appeals, continued their discussion of an expiration period or invalid period for approved variances or approved conditional uses that are not enacted upon. They did agree on some verbiage, and we've sent that down to the Lucas County Plan Commission for their review, and that'll be working its way through the zoning resolution amendment process. And then they also heard a variance request for Oak Creek North. That's a new subdivision on King Road where the nursery is, and they approved that variance for the front setback. The Zoning Commission heard two zone change requests and recommended approval for both of them. This board approved them, I think it was a week or 2 weeks after that. The one was down the street at 4443 North Holland, Sylvania, and the other one was on Meyer Drive, right across from the Meyer store, and that's for a 13,000 square foot office building. That's all I really have for the minutes, or I'm sorry, for the monthly meetings. I do want to take a moment, not really sure what I'm supposed to say here, but want to acknowledge the passing of Jeff Casper, who sat on our zoning commission for the past 2 years. As you probably know, he passed away a couple weeks ago unexpectedly. I didn't know Jeff well, just from the meetings, but I enjoyed working with him the little bit that we did work together, and appreciated his input, especially on signage issues.
Well said, Darrell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, your monthly report and a resolution.
Good evening. Item number 3, monthly report for your review. We are completing this storm sewer project on Meridale and Villa. We had, this is for the month of March, so thinking back, we did have a couple snow and ice events. The salt usage for the year for the 14-15 season indicated there estimated about 1,900 tons total. We still have our summer fill, and we did incur some savings from doing a direct dump with the salt from ODOT. Foreman Steve participated in the sign training from ODOT, conducted that and received his certificate. We did do a chainsaw safety class. Utility workers and maintenance conducted that from a steel rep in-house. In the service department, F21 conducted its NFPA and ODOT or DOT inspections along with F2. The road and fleet heavy equipment services were conducted as well for DOT inspections. We are entering the construction season, so on page 2, I've compiled a list of major infrastructure and construction projects that will be conducted or scheduled to be conducted throughout 2015. Some of the major ones are the OPWC resurfacing and the 2015 resurfacing project, which is 100% local share. There will be approximately $1.5 million in project costs going out this year. Any questions on that?
Is that East Cobblestone Lane, is that the same street that they complained about the entryway of being kind of? are we
East
doing
Cobblestone
something-
Lane.
Is that, we're doing
Correct.
something there, is that
Well, in the back portion of
the
that,
back side of it?
yeah.
Okay.
The complaint came from the concrete portion, the entrance, that is the colored stamped concrete. And we're working with the homeowners association on a solution for that.
Thanks, Rob.
Item number 4 is a resolution 15-046, authorization to advertise for the 2015 curb repair project.
I'll offer resolution 15-046, authorization to advertise for 2015 curb repair project.
Second.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your hard work.
Thanks, Rob. Next up is the fire department, Chief Kowalski.
Thanks, John. I'll be brief. I have 4 things in front of you this evening. The first is our monthly report. We'll skim through it unless you have some specific questions. Our mutual aid request, we received mutual aid twice from Toledo and 5 times from Springfield. We didn't give out any mutual aid that last month. Under community risk reduction, public safety education, we had 3 public education events, 4 joint inspections with the state fire marshal. These would be to nursing homes and hospitals. And we had 13 installations of fire alarm system, or fire smoke detectors, excuse me. We started our 2015 commercial building inspections and conducted 91 that month. And we also, Chief Frederick did a fire safety inspection, continuing education. We wanted to get the crews together for the CE to go over inspections, how do we inspect, and some of the pitfalls of inspection, so the crews are up to date on the new standards. And then we also participated in the Sylvania Business Expo. Under building and project plan reviews, we had 21 plan reviews up again this month, 3 daycare inspections, 4 consultants for businesses and safety planning, 12 final acceptance tests for alarm systems, and 4 businesses put in Knox boxes. A Knox box is a metal box that the business owner puts in front of his business, and we have a key that we can enter that box and get the keys for the facility when we have an alarm there. Under continuing education, our paramedics topic in March was OBGYN, emergencies, and infant resuscitation. And we also went ahead and, as I said, did the fire inspection CE. Deputy Chief Ram also did some continuing education on our firehouse RMS program. And we also added a cyanide meter to our different meters that we have on site to test for toxic gases and fumes when we're at fire scenes. Continuing the March training report on the next page, page 8, we also had additional individuals go through the Allen County Fire Chiefs Association training, National Fire Academy, and online Ohio Fire Academy training. It's a 24 site that the guys can get on at the stations on computers and keep their continuing education up. On the bottom is the overtime report for March 2015. With training, we had 192 hours in overtime and training. Staffing, that is for 161 hours for staffing, reduced staffing levels. Most of this, we had an officer off for an extended period of time. The majority of that overtime was for that officer being off. And then run holdover, all that is we had 3.33 hours. That's if we get a run at shift change. The crews have to hold over if they're out on the run. The last page is really hard to read. I apologize for that, but a lady wrote us a note. Even my wife tried to read that. She reads doctor's writings all the time, and she couldn't make it out. But this is a lady that takes care of Mr. Walter Chapman, who is 102 years old. He's an artist here in Sylvania. He has some artworks out throughout Sylvania. He painted a picture for us and presented it to us last year, and he wanted a picture of the guys with that picture. So we took a picture of the guys with holding his picture in front of an engine and got it to him, and he was very grateful that we did that for him. That's the end of the monthly report, unless you have any questions for me. Okay, we have three resolutions in front of you. The first one is Resolution 15047, and that is, you should have a captain's list attached to that. That is to certify the captain's test that we just gave. We had two candidates for the testing. Both of them passed. We have a list. I'd like you to certify that list, and the list will be in effect from this year, April 21st, for 2 consecutive years.
I'll offer Resolution 15-047 to certify the fire department's provisional list for rank of captain.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
The second resolution is Resolution 15-048. As you know, in January, we had vacated the training captain's position. I would like permission to promote Aaron Fry to that position effective April 21st, 2015.
I'll offer Resolution 15-048, authorizing to fill the vacated training captain position to Aaron Fry.
Second?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
The last resolution is 15-053, and as you know, we went and put out for a bid for hose. The amount of the grant that we received was $99,000. $90,000 was the grant. We had to match it with $9,500. We put bids out for new hose. Actually, Chief Rand was instrumental in doing this with two other individuals that we'll talk about next meeting. But I would like you to accept the resolution to allow us to purchase hose from Finley Fire Equipment with $82,800.
We'll offer Resolution number 15-053 to accept fire hose bid.
Second.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
And next time I'll either bring my glasses or get bigger font. I apologize for that.
Thanks, Steve. Next up is Chief Bromley with the monthly report.
Good evening. Before I get started with the monthly report, I just want to publicly acknowledge the fire department. Back April 10th, about a week and a half ago, my mom is an 80-year-old, had her first traffic accident.
Oh, boy.
And it was somewhat serious, but she's feisty, she's okay. But at the same time, the firefighters on the scene, the two deputy chiefs that responded, and then Chief Kowalski even came to Fowler Hospital while we were waiting in ER to make sure that she was okay. And I'll tell you what, I got to experience firsthand why people live in Sylvania Township, you know, that kind of service and compassion. I told my mom, that if you had to have an accident, you had it in the right place. But they were just terrific and very compassionate, and I thank you. Thank you. Continuing on with the monthly report, I'll make this real quick. Page 2, I'm not going to repeat the numbers, but you can see the numbers there on calls for service. For some reason, we could not get the total police calls, which is the biggest number from the county for the month, but it's usually 4,000 to 5,000, but you can see the calls for service. That's the big thing. Page 3, you'll see our calls for service. at $1,166 for the month, which we're running just a little bit behind last year, which is a good thing. Traffic citations are up, as you can see. Our parking tickets are a small number, they're up. And our accidents are slightly down for property damage and slightly up for injury. And I won't go through all the individual offenses, except that we are considerably down in burglaries, which is a great thing, and we are considerably down in robberies, which is even better, with robbery being a crime of violence. Page 4, you can see we continue to end up way ahead on our prisoner transport cost versus what the city pays us for that amount. It's a service that's worked really well for both. They were able to convert their transport van into an SRT van, so it benefited them in more ways than just the staffing of trying to transport prisoners. Page 5, detective caseload stats. Again, I won't read all the numbers. I'll just, I guess the one of note, or two of note, is the fact that they were assigned 69 new cases in the month of March, and they've cleared 36 of them so far. And then you can see the other numbers as far as their total clearance and such. Page 6 was a pretty good month for the DEA task force. Our detective that is assigned that task force, you can see they did seize quite a bit of drugs. The numbers are there. And of note, I'm sure the figure will pop up to you, that there were about $300,000 in assets seized, of which we'll get a percentage of that, a small percentage, but $300,000 is a lot of money. Even a small percentage is substantial. Page 7, again, I guess the first sentence is the biggest thing there. It's going to start to get a lot busier with our K-9. That photograph is just a photograph of a large amount of paraphernalia that our officer, with the assistance of Speedy, the K-9, was able to take off of a driver he stopped on Reynolds Road. He's been focusing on Reynolds. There's a lot of activity, both in Toledo and the township, relevant to criminal activity and drug activity and such on Reynolds Road. If you're looking at a house on Reynolds Road, don't buy it.
Now, Reynolds, so everything to the west of Reynolds is ours, and on the east side of the street is Toledo?
No, east side, everything is ours down to Elmer Drive, on east and west.
Okay.
Like Dunbar Mechanical and all that stuff, and then obviously the big Wildwood complex and such. But all the way just down to Elmer, where Crosby Gardens is.
And all the condos on Regency are all ours too there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
both sides.
Okay.
Yeah, the jurisdiction lines are really broken up there.
Good job. Yeah.
Takes you a while as a cop to even know what's township and probably for you guys too, what's Toledo. We didn't used to have the CAD to be able to rely on. Page 8, of note, we had community affairs officers with a display booth at the Sylvania Business Expo, which is always a good promo thing. We're still teaching Derek Stranahan, and then just some of the other things in the schools. You can read those, but you can see kind of some of the things that we get involved in. We're at Timberstone, not that those are problem schools, but we're at Timberstone and Arbor Hills a number of times for different things like bullying and threat assessment on students and that sort of thing. No calls yet on the speed trailer. I anticipate that's going to change very quickly. Page 9, you can see just the amount our share from fines in Sylvania Muni Court. And then one thing that I'll include in next month's, in fact, Mr. Zeitler may be interested in this too, but we went to, rather than afternoon and midnight shift officers filing charges, which cost us overtime, we have an on-duty day shift officer, a sergeant, administrative sergeant, Sergeant Whalen, filing those charges now. And we started that, the directive that went out was effective February 17th. He filed 13 charges on 9 different suspects. during the month of February, which was only 12 days or so, 11 days. In March, he filed 54 charges on 34 different suspects. So you can see that, it's pretty active. We're filing a number of charges, saving us some money, or at least overtime. And then lastly, to wrap this thing up, two nice letters. One, which is always a tough situation for policemen and firemen, because I know they experience this just as regularly or more than we do. We had we call it a Code 18, or a naturally deceased person in a home. And we got a nice letter from a lady who, it was her mom. And she describes it was not only her mom, but her best friend. And of note, she says, I called 911 and the police and firemen arrived in a very short time span. My condo was soon full of kind and comforting professionals. I could have not asked for a more consoling environment. And she cites Officer John Munch, who stayed at the condo until the coroner released her mom, and goes on to say he's a fine gentleman, and I feel that he needed some special recognition. And then lastly here, just another letter from the Detective Bureau, or reference to Detective Bureau, and I just highlighted the one sentence here. This is from somebody that lives on Shadow Lake there, off of Savannah Avenue, and she is a very nice neighborhood. Obviously, people don't have much contact with the police. And she said, this is the second time we've had contact with the Savannah Township Police Department, and both times we have been treated respectfully and with the utmost professionalism. We think the Savannah Township Police Department does a fantastic job, and we are proud to live in Savannah Township.
Very nice.
So, thanks. And that's all I have, pending any questions.
Good. Thanks, Chief. Have a great night. Appreciate
Thank you.
Report.
I have nothing further, trustees. Any questions for me? If not, then I will turn it over to Mr. Simcoe.
I'm going to do the month-end report, and then Scott's going to do the motions, but
I can read you through the resolutions. First one is the approval of identity now certificate, and what that resulted, that was from, we made a payment to working partners for the substance abuse training, and it was just a timing issue. I don't know if you remember last month we brought in appropriations for it, and we just ended up having to make the payments before we got all that paperwork done.
I'll offer Resolution 15-049, authorizing a then and now certificate for payment to working partners.
Second?
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
The next one is Resolution 1550, township appropriations from unencumbered balances. And working with the folks in the finance office, we reviewed several of the line items of the budget, anticipating what may be shortages. Our goal is to kind of get those up front ahead of time so that we, don't have to rush when the paperwork comes through. So we've identified some line items that needed adjustment at the top. The bottom are grant funds. Those are just the small grant funds, and we wanted to appropriate the balances so that those were available to be spent also.
I'll have Resolution 15-050, appropriation from encumbered balance.
Second.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Did you have a question?
I was going to, but I'll just look at it later.
Okay. Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Next one is 15051, the transfer of funds.
I'll have Resolution 1501, transfer of funds.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
The next one is a transfer of appropriations. We had a piece of equipment that we had to rent as part of the salt storage and the road projects. And so we just identified other line items that we could move the money from to cover it. That's what we're doing.
Offer resolution 15052, transfer appropriations.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
You know, on the, I think that's all we have on the month-end analysis. It's still awfully early to try to get any trends as to how we're doing. The quick thing to note is that the general fund is up, but we did have a large estate that still produced some funds for us. It's actually $250,000, I think. And then you will see a little bit of differences in the revenues, but for example, we still do not have the rollback or homestead. They did not arrive in March this year. Last year they did. And so that's over $1 million, which is spread across the funds. And so I think actually revenue-wise and expense-wise, we're doing fine this year again. But it takes a little while for some of these things to kind of sort their way out. But we're still, I think, doing well on our numbers. That's all I have, unless someone has a question. That's it for fiscal.
Nobody signed in from the hearing of the public for the non-agenda items.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to go in executive session for personnel discipline in the police department.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Give the time, please.
I'm sorry. 6:26.
Close enough.
Or 6:28. your phone as a...
You
All right.
Hand me down on this one.
Okay.
That's a real cheap one.
All set, Sammy? Good there? All right.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to come back out of executive session at 7:07.
Second.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn at 7:07 and 30 seconds.
Second.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Let me close up my...
Kindergartner's project I gotta go home and get done.
Oh, nice.